Snow fell silently over Greenfield, a small village nestled amidst vast pine forests. The distant toll of church bells echoed through the air, heralding Christmas Eve. The village homes, adorned with twinkling lights and colorful wreaths, looked as if they had been plucked straight out of a painting. The crisp air carried the scent of pine, mingling with the aroma of freshly baked cookies and wood burning in fireplaces. At the heart of the village stood the Parker home, a charming wooden house with windows softly glowing from electric candles. Snow blanketed the roof, creating a postcard-worthy scene. Inside, the warmth of the family stood in stark contrast to the cold outside. Evelyn Parker, the matriarch, was the heart of the Christmas celebration. She moved through the house, adjusting details on the dinner table, checking dishes in the kitchen, and occasionally glancing toward the attic. That locked box seemed heavier tonight than on any other night. Henry Parker, Evelyn's husband, was carefully assembling the family's heirloom wooden nativity scene. The delicate set, passed down through generations, featured hand-carved figures of Mary, Joseph, baby Jesus, and the animals surrounding them. As Henry adjusted the pieces with precision, two of his grandchildren, Ethan and Lily, watched with wide, curious eyes, captivated by the intricate details. "Why is the baby sleeping in such a hard bed?" Lily asked, pointing to baby Jesus in the manger. "Because sometimes the greatest miracles happen in the simplest places," Henry replied with a smile. The main living room buzzed with voices and laughter. Rachel and Tom, Evelyn and Henry's grown children, had arrived earlier with their families. Rachel, always practical and organized, was helping her kids hang the final ornaments on the Christmas tree, while Tom kept an eye on the younger children's games. Despite the festive atmosphere, Rachel couldn't help but notice something unusual about her mother. Evelyn, typically brimming with energy, seemed restless. "Mom seems different tonight, doesn't she?" Rachel whispered to Tom as she adjusted an ornament on the tree. "I noticed," Tom replied, glancing toward Evelyn. "She seems a bit distant. Do you think something's wrong?" The two exchanged a look, but decided not to push the issue. Christmas was the most cherished time for the Parker family, and neither wanted to risk spoiling the evening. Still, Evelyn's furtive glances toward the attic and her distracted demeanor planted a seed of curiosity that quietly grew. As the night wore on, dinner was served. The table, meticulously set, looked like it belonged in a magazine. Red and gold candles cast a warm glow over the perfectly arranged dishes, while the aroma of roasted turkey filled the air. The food was a feast for the senses. Creamy mashed potatoes, cranberry sauce, pumpkin and apple pies, and cookies adorned with colorful icing. Henry gave a brief speech of gratitude, and the room soon filled with laughter again. The children, impatient as ever, kept asking when they could open their presents, but Evelyn skillfully steered the conversation away. When the main dishes were cleared and dessert was being served, Evelyn stood up. Her sudden movement silenced the room. With a steady gaze, she captured everyone's attention. "Before we end the night, I have something special to share with you," she began, holding the wooden nativity scene in her hands. "This nativity is more than just a decoration. There's a story behind it, one I want to share with you. But let's save that for after dessert." A murmur rippled through the room, but Evelyn ignored the questions. Her eyes sparkled with a mix of anticipation and emotion. The family returned to their meal, though a palpable sense of suspense lingered. Then, precisely at 8 o'clock, an unexpected knock at the door broke the evening's tranquility. The sound reverberated through the house, and conversations immediately ceased. Rachel rose to her feet, exchanging a curious glance with Tom. Who could it be at this hour? She wondered aloud as she walked toward the hallway. Greenfield was a peaceful village, and unexpected visitors were rare, especially on such a cold night. Henry hurried to open the door, and the sight of the man standing outside left everyone in suspense. The stranger was elderly, wearing a heavy coat that barely concealed his exhaustion. He clutched a yellowed envelope, holding it as if it was something precious. "Good evening," he said in a hoarse but gentle voice. "My name is Walter. I'm here to speak with Evelyn Parker. It's something important." Everyone in the room turned their eyes to Evelyn. When she saw the man, her face turned pale. Her hands, steady until that moment, trembled slightly. Walter stepped hesitantly into the house, removing his heavy coat to reveal a face etched with time, but filled with a quiet serenity. His faded blue eyes swept the room with a mix of curiosity and nostalgia. Evelyn, still in shock, took a few moments to react. Henry was the first to break the silence, inviting the man to sit by the fireplace, where the gentle warmth dispelled the cold he had brought in from outside. "You said you needed to speak with me," Evelyn began, her voice slightly shaky. "But how do we know each other?" Walter, wearing a somber smile, placed the yellowed envelope on the table beside him, but didn't respond immediately. He seemed to be searching for the right words. After a few moments, he spoke. "I was a friend of your father, Evelyn, your real father." The room plunged into an uncomfortable silence. All eyes were fixed on Evelyn, who seemed frozen in place. Rachel was the first to break the tension. "Wait, what do you mean by that?" she asked, her voice laced with skepticism. Walter let out a deep sigh before continuing. "Evelyn, there's something you don't know. Something your parents, the ones who raised you, kept from you to protect you." He paused, locking his gaze on her. "And now, I believe it's time for you to know the truth." Evelyn closed her eyes for a moment, trying to process what she was hearing. Rachel and Tom exchanged looks, their expressions a mix of concern and disbelief. The children, sensing the tension, began to huddle closer to their parents for reassurance. "Walter, if you know something about me, I think you should be straightforward," Evelyn said, her tone firmer now as she tried to regain her composure. Walter leaned forward as if to share something he didn't want anyone else to overhear, but before he could say anything, Rachel interrupted. "Excuse me, but how exactly did you find your way here? How did you know where to find my mother?" "Rachel," Henry admonished, but Walter raised his hand, signaling that it was all right. "That's a fair question," Walter admitted, adjusting his position in the chair. "I followed a lead that brought me to this village, and when I saw the name Parker on this house, I knew I'd found the right place." The mystery deepened, and the envelope remained untouched on the table, its presence almost tangible. Henry, ever cautious, shifted the focus of the conversation. "Walter, you said you were a friend of Evelyn's father. Could you tell us more about him?" The old man nodded, a melancholic smile forming on his lips. "His name was Samuel. He was a man of integrity, courage, and loyalty. We went through tough times together, especially after the war. Samuel always said he would do anything to protect those he loved, and he did exactly that." As Walter spoke, Evelyn seemed to be swept into an emotional whirlwind. His words stirred something deeply buried within her. Suddenly, fragmented images from her childhood began to surface. A sense of emptiness she had never been able to explain. The few memories she had of her parents, always shrouded in mystery. "I don't understand," Evelyn finally said, her voice trembling. "My father, the man who raised me, never mentioned another Samuel. Why would he hide something like this from me?" Walter lowered his gaze as if the answer was too painful to voice. He gestured toward the envelope. "Perhaps it's time to open this." Evelyn hesitated, her hands hovering over the envelope. Rachel, noticing her mother's reluctance, stepped forward and picked it up. "If it's so important, I'll open it," she said. "Rachel, no!" protested Evelyn, but it was too late. Her daughter had already carefully broken the seal and begun to pull out the contents. From inside emerged a faded photograph and a handwritten letter. Rachel held the photo up to the light for everyone to see. It showed a young Evelyn, probably 5 or 6 years old, standing beside an unfamiliar couple and a small child. Evelyn's eyes widened as she brought a hand to her mouth. I don't remember this," she whispered. Rachel turned the photo over, revealing the words Christmas 1948 and an unfamiliar address written on the back. She then unfolded the letter and began to read aloud. "Dear Evelyn, if you're reading this, it means the time has come for you to learn the truth. You are not who you think you are. Your real family loved you deeply but had to leave you to save your life. Samuel and I made a vow to protect you, even if it meant keeping you away from your past." The letter ended there, but it was enough to cast a shadow of confusion and emotion over the family. Evelyn let out a sob and abruptly stood, moving to the window. Walter approached cautiously. "Evelyn, I know this is a lot to take in, but you deserve to know who you truly are. Samuel asked me years ago to give you this letter when the time was right, and I believe that time is now." Henry placed a comforting hand on Evelyn's shoulder, while Rachel and Tom remained silent, trying to process the weight of the revelation. "There's more to the story, isn't there?" Tom finally asked, breaking the silence. Walter nodded. "Yes, but the rest of the answers are in that box in the attic." Evelyn turned to Walter, her eyes glistening with tears. "Why now?" she asked. "Why wait so long to tell me this?" Walter sighed, visibly emotional. "Because Christmas is a time for miracles, and some secrets need the right moment to be revealed." A heavy silence filled the room as Evelyn, hesitant, glanced toward the attic. The mysterious box had been there her entire life, locked away and forgotten, but now it seemed to hold the key to everything. Rachel was the first to rise. "If the answer is in the attic, let's go find it," she said with determination. Tom nodded, casting a supportive look at his mother. "Maybe it's best if we face this together." Evelyn finally nodded. Henry grabbed a flashlight and, with some difficulty, pulled down the retractable ladder leading to the attic. The air up there was cold and heavy, carrying the distinctive smell of aged wood and accumulated dust. Evelyn climbed carefully, followed by her children, and finally by Walter, who observed everything with a grave expression. The box was exactly where Evelyn remembered it, in a corner, covered with a thick layer of dust and cobwebs. Her hands trembled as she held the key that Henry had handed her. For a moment she hesitated, but the reassuring touch of Rachel on her shoulder gave her the courage she needed. With a soft click, the box opened, revealing a treasure trove of preserved memories. Inside was a collection of diaries, letters, photographs, and even small personal items. On top of everything was a glass Christmas ornament, broken but still beautiful. Evelyn held the object, feeling an inexplicable connection to it. "I remember this," she whispered. "I was very little, but I remember it was Christmas." Walter stepped closer, his eyes fixed on the diaries. "These notebooks are Samuel's records," he explained. "They tell the entire story, from World War II to the years he spent taking care of you." Rachel and Tom began leafing through the papers, while Evelyn held the first diary. Samuel's words were vivid, almost as if he were there, speaking directly to her. "We left our homeland to protect Evelyn. Her biological parents entrusted her life to us. They knew they were being hunted, and that they would never be safe as long as they stayed together." Evelyn's tears stained the yellowed pages as she read. The story unfolded like a nightmare. Her biological parents, a young European couple, had been forced to entrust her to Samuel and his wife, fearing for their own lives. The context was grim, marked by the devastation of war and the constant fear of persecution. As Evelyn absorbed the information, Rachel found an airline ticket inside the box. She held it up for everyone to see. "Mom, this is for tomorrow, and it's for a city called Marburg in Germany." Shock rippled through the group. Walter, his expression calm, finally spoke. "Samuel knew that one day you would want to uncover the truth. He purchased this ticket many years ago, but knew only you could decide whether to use it." Evelyn looked at the ticket, her mind swirling with unanswered questions. She vaguely remembered the name Marburg, but she couldn't fully grasp what connected her to that city. Tom, ever practical, suggested they examine the rest of the box before making any decisions. Among the documents, Rachel found a handwritten letter signed by a woman named Helene. The delicate handwriting conveyed a mix of desperation and hope. "Dear Evelyn, if you ever read this, please know that we loved you more than anything. We had no other choice. The world was a dangerous place for us, and entrusting you to Samuel's care was the greatest sacrifice of our lives. Please don't judge us for what we did." Evelyn clutched the letter to her chest, the weight of the revelation overwhelming her. Rachel, concerned, asked, "Mum, what do you want to do? This ticket is an invitation to seek answers, but it might also bring more pain. Are you sure you want to move forward?" Evelyn took a deep breath, her tearful eyes fixed on the dusty attic window. The moonlight bathed the room in a soft glow, almost as if urging her to continue. "I need to know," she said, her voice quiet but resolute. "I can't live the rest of my life without understanding who I am." Walter placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. "You don't have to do this alone. I'm here to help. It's what Samuel asked of me." Henry chimed in with an encouraging smile. "And you're not going without us. We're your family now. We'll face this together." The group descended from the attic, carrying the diaries and letters as precious relics. Evelyn spent the rest of the night poring over the memories that emerged, while Rachel and Tom discussed the logistics of such a sudden trip. By morning, as the family gathered for breakfast, the decision had been made. They would travel to Marburg to piece together the remaining fragments of the puzzle. Walter, with his experience and connections, would accompany them. "This is the moment to uncover the truth," Evelyn declared, her eyes shining with determination. "And I want all of you with me for this." As snow continued to blanket Greenfield, the atmosphere in the Parker household shifted. Christmas had become something far greater than gifts and traditions. It was now a journey to rediscover identity, family, and perhaps even a miracle. The next morning, the Parker family boarded their flight to Germany. The airport buzzed with activity, but Evelyn felt an unusual calm, as though destiny was guiding her. Walter stayed close, offering words of reassurance whenever he noticed tension in her expression. Rachel and Tom tended to the children, while Henry held Evelyn's hand tightly, silently promising to stand by her no matter what lay ahead. After long hours of travel, the group arrived in Marburg, a picturesque town with narrow streets and medieval architecture. The softly falling snow reminded Evelyn of Greenfield, but there was something more, an unexplainable sense of familiarity in the air. Guided by Samuel's notes, the family made their way to a small stone house in the historic center. At the gate stood an elderly man. His white hair framed a kind face etched with the passage of time, but his brown eyes gleamed with restrained emotion. Walter approached first, exchanging a few words with the man in German before turning to Evelyn. "This is Friedrich. He was a friend of your biological parents and is the last living connection we have to them," Walter explained. Evelyn's heart raced as she shook Friedrich's hand. He invited them inside, leading them to a cozy room adorned with cherished keepsakes and black and white photographs. At the center of the table stood a framed picture that immediately drew Evelyn's attention. Her biological parents, Helene and Victor, holding her as a baby. "They were wonderful people," Friedrich said, his voice heavy with emotion. "Helene was strong and courageous, and Victor, he would have done anything to protect you both." Evelyn listened intently as Friedrich recounted stories about her parents. They had been artists, known in the community for their talent in sculpture and painting, but the war had forced them to abandon everything. During the occupation, they became targets due to their beliefs and heritage. To protect Evelyn, they entrusted her to Samuel, a childhood friend of Victor's. "They never stopped thinking of you," Friedrich continued. Helene often asked me to write letters to Samuel, asking about you, but they could never reunite. When they realized they were being hunted, they decided to stay hidden, while Samuel took you to safety. Evelyn was overwhelmed with emotion as Friedrich handed her a wooden box containing her parents' belongings. Inside, there were sketches by Helene, showing scenes of Christmas and portraits of Evelyn as a baby. There was also a final letter written by Helene and Victor before they disappeared. With trembling hands, Evelyn opened the letter and began to read aloud, with her family gathered around her. "Dear Evelyn, if you are reading this, it means you survived the shadows that pursued us. Our greatest wish was to see you grow up happy, surrounded by love. Whatever the circumstances, never doubt how much we love you. The nativity scene that Samuel took with you was made by your hands and symbolizes the strength of faith in difficult times. Take care of it, for it is a piece of us that will always be with you." As she finished reading, Evelyn couldn't hold back the tears. That final piece of her story closed a chapter, bringing answers but also an irreparable emptiness. Yet, the presence of her family, so supportive and loving, was a reminder that she was not alone. The next day, Evelyn visited the town cemetery, where a simple tombstone marked the names of Helene and Victor. Walter and Friedrich explained that they had been found and killed just before the end of the war, but they had managed to save Evelyn by keeping her hidden. Evelyn knelt before the grave, feeling a mix of sadness and gratitude. "I found them," she whispered, "and now I know who I am." The return to Greenfield was peaceful, with a reflective silence filling the journey. When they arrived home, Christmas was still present. The trees still sparkled, and the village lights continued to blink as a reminder of the magic of the season. That evening, the family gathered around the fireplace. Evelyn, holding the wooden nativity scene in her hands, looked at everyone with a sincere smile. "This Christmas brought me something I never expected, the truth about my past. But above all, it showed me that true family is the one that stands by your side, no matter the circumstances." Walter, sitting next to Evelyn, handed her a final letter from Samuel that he had kept until that moment. The words from her friend echoed the spirit of Christmas. "Evelyn, Christmas is a time for miracles, but also for reconciliation and hope. May this nativity scene always remind you that even in the darkest moments, there is light and love waiting to be found." Evelyn placed the nativity scene at the center of the room, surrounded by the diaries and letters that told her story. Rachel and Tom, moved, embraced their mother, while Henry squeezed her hand affectionately. The snow fell softly outside, covering Greenfield with a magical glow. Inside the Parker home, the sense of peace was almost tangible. They had discovered that Christmas was more than just gifts and traditions. It was a time of renewal, unity, and rediscovering what truly matters. With a sigh, Evelyn looked at Walter and Friedrich, then at her family. "Christmas has always brought us miracles, but this year it brought us the truth.